Hello and welcome to Board Game Gumbo. Today we're unboxing Smartphone Inc. from Cosmodrome Games and Arcane Wonders, as well as the 1.1 expansion. Smartphone Inc. plays 1 to 5 players in 60 to 90 minutes. It's primarily an economic and resource management game. This is the second edition of the game, so there are slight differences if you currently own the first edition. All right, so here's our rule book. We've got the AI rules here. Now, the AI you can use in the solo version of the game, or you can just use it as an extra player if you're playing with less than 5. Got some more components here for the AI, and then player shields. Each player is going to have one of these shields to hide their actions behind, but they are otherwise the same except for the color. They do have some multiplication tables on the back, and they tell you what starting location you're at because your starting location differs depending on your color. Here's our scoreboard. Essentially, during the course of the game, you are trying to score the most points, which is money. Every time you earn money during the course of the game, you will go up. They have obviously tracks if you get over 100. There is a bit of variability with your starting wealth up here, because the way the game plays, there's an advantage to where you start. We have some technology pieces here. It's all punch out really easily. These are also double-sided, so a few extra options there. Here's the game board. There is only one side. The expansion actually adds another game board for when you're playing with lower player counts. But if you just get the base game, regardless of what player count, you'll use the same board. So we have some areas over here. These will be where you can acquire upgrades. The technologies will be put down into here. And this board has nice little recess spots for a lot of the pieces. So these technologies will actually sit down in there flush, like so, until you acquire them. And these tokens actually will never go away because every player can unlock each technology. You have the different locations on the board. They also tell you who starts there. So yellow starts in India. You can see it on the board. We've got a location over here, and this is where you'll track the price that you're selling your phones for. So players can adjust what their sell price is. And one of the main reasons you may choose to do that is that whoever has the lowest price goes first in round order. At the very top, you see the round track. So you'll play a total of 5 rounds. And then over there, you'll see the 8 different phases of each round. So we've got some punchboard here, as well as some additional technology tokens. So these are the technology tokens that will slot down into these smaller spaces, like so. And what these are used for is the first person to unlock this technology will get this token, which will give them a certain number of points, but also makes technology cheaper for everybody after that. We've got punchboard for the tech boards here, or the industry boards. So these will be over here, and you'll be able to acquire them during the course of a round. These all punch out really easily. It's nice thick cardboard, so there's no complaints with the components so far. Just more of those. You got some of these yellow tokens, which are just sort of generic resource tokens that you can gain throughout the course of the game. And essentially they'll just give you an extra resource every round. And then you have these blackout tokens, which actually replace locations on the board if you're playing with less than 5 players. So it kind of constricts the board, but also adds some new bonuses. So for instance, it adds these types of bonuses. This one just gives you an extra resource if you happen to be on here, as well as when you go there, you get immediate victory points. Finally, we've got the player cases, which are a little difficult to get out there. That's a tight fit. All right. So here is a player box. Each player will get one of these. And it includes 2 of these action tiles, and then one of these boxes themselves, which open up and will hold all your pieces in them. So this extra box that we had in here, we'll go through and we'll pull out all these pieces, and these become the player pieces. So for instance, if this was the black player, you'd go through and you'd add all these pieces in here. And this is just an easier way to organize it. So this player just has to grab this container. A couple things about this is, one, you've got 2 locations here. This will kind of be your reservoir of all of your cubes. The plastic pieces actually come in a couple different shapes. So you've got standard cubes, you got these buildings, and then you've got these sort of Wi-Fi signal looking pieces. So you'll just put them in there to organize them. Your cubes are potential smartphones for you to sell, and they'll just go in here. But over the course of a round, you'll produce a certain number of cell phones, and those will be the cell phones that you have available to sell for that round. So you may end up moving a couple of them into this space, which means these are the ones that you have available to sell. To do that, you'll be using these tiles along with any of these extra industry tiles you may have acquired over the course of the game. And if you don't want to use these smaller ones, you can flip them over and they just give you an extra resource. But the way that these work is you're going to overlay them, and they are double-sided. You can use any side that you want. So you could use both on this side or mix and match. And whenever you use these, you have to cover up at least one location on one of the boards. So you could put it like this and just cover one location, or you could actually put it like this and cover 3. What's showing on your board is essentially the strength of the actions that you're going to perform on that round. So you saw earlier the different phases of the round are these different actions on the board. So these black locations are production. That's where you're making your smartphones for the round. So I see 3 of them on the board, but you also produce for every spot you've covered. So since I've covered 3 spots, I'm actually producing 6 phones that round. So I would move 6 of my cubes over, and now I have those available to sell later in this round. It is worth noting that all the phones that you produce on a round go back into your supply. There is a technology that negates that rule, but standard rule is that you'll lose all of these that you don't sell. And then you'll go through the rest of them. So the yellow one allows you to gain these extra industry tiles based on the strength of your action. And again, you're going in player order based off of who has the lowest value on their cell phones. So you may want to purposefully move your cell phone value lower than your opponent's so that you can take multiple of these actions and get a lot of industry tiles before anybody else can get to them. Then you have the purple, which are the technology action. And whenever you do that, you're simply going to take some of these Wi-Fi things and you're going to put them in there to show that you're working on this technology. And then whenever you have a number of pieces in there equal to what's required for that technology, like so, you'll simply remove all of them and then put one in this spot, which shows that you have this technology. And of course, if you're the first person, you'll also get this tile. You also have the blue location here, which is trucking or logistics. And what that lets you do is it allows you to move around the board and build markets in different areas. So if I had a market here and I have one blue strength to that ability, I'll be able to move around the board and add one strength to any location that's adjacent to somewhere where I already have a market. So since I have a market here and there's a black line there, I could put one there. And I'm trying to meet this value. And once I do, I'm allowed to put a market at that location. And now I can sell my phones there. And that's the final action of the round. You can see at the top, and that's selling your phones. So each market will buy phones for either different values or if you have certain technologies. The values have to be equal or less to. So if you're selling a phone with a value of 5, you can't sell it to this vendor because they only want phones 4 or less, but you can sell it to this vendor. Even though it's a 6, it's allowed to be less than. If you have a phone with a value of 3, you can sell it to both vendors. And then if you have any of these technologies, you can also sell a phone there. And you'll simply do that by taking one of your phones from your reservoir and putting them on that location. And then at the end of the round, you'll count up how many cubes you have showing on the board and multiply it by the value of your phones currently and score that many points or that much money. And that's everything in the base copy of Smartphone Inc. Hang around for a minute and I will show you the update or the first expansion. So here we have update 1.1, or the expansion for Smartphone Inc. And this doesn't change the base concepts of the game. It still plays 1 to 5 players and about 60 to 90 minutes. The expansion adds some new components, a few new rules, but mostly more of the same that you're familiar with from the base game. So here we have an additional rule book, which is fairly light. Again, there's not a lot new here. There's a new directives module, which is like an objective. There's a new board specifically for 2 to 3 players. So if you're playing at a lower player count, you have a smaller board. There's new technology tiles. Of course, that was already in the base game. Now you just have more of them. There's actually new miniatures specifically dealing with some of the technology tiles. And there's a hardcore mode now, which I suppose if you want the game to be harder, you now have access to. So here are the miniatures. Again, you only use these if there are certain technologies in the game. But if you are playing with one of those technologies, you're just going to attach these rings to the base of the CEOs so you know which CEO belongs to each player. These are actually fairly well modeled. We have the new board here, which you can see is just a smaller version of the original board. You still have spots for the industry tokens, although less of them. Still playing over 5 rounds, still the same 8 phases, just a smaller board for when you're playing with less people. We've got some new, I believe these are called mini expansions, tiles that you can acquire through the course of the game that just give you small bonuses. So again, whenever you are arranging your tiles at the start of the round, you have these single spot tiles that you can place on your board. And the last thing we have is this new pack of technologies. As well as the new objective tiles. So here's one of the ones that would use the CEO token. At the end of your turn, this phase, you may sell 1 phone in 1 region with your market and CEO. So wherever your CEO happens to be, as long as there's a market there, you can sell an additional phone. And I assume that wouldn't take up one of the spots for that area. And then the other side will also use the CEO. You may ignore the requirements and sell to any buyers in a region with your market and CEO. That one's really strong. And then we have the objective tiles here. So you'll put out a certain number of these at the start of the game, and they all award 12 victory points. And essentially what you'll do is if you complete whatever's listed on that round, you'll flip it over and score the points. So it's a first come, first serve type deal, but sell 10 or more phones in one round. Aside from the money that you get from doing that, you also get to flip this over. And the completion of these is also dictated by the value of your phones. If you have the lower value phone, then you get to complete this first if multiple people complete it in the same round. And that's it. That's everything in the expansion for smartphone.